That comforting smell, that first sip of your morning coffee. It's such a daily ritual for so many of us.
It really is.
But did you know that cup faces this uh, relentless tiny foe? Today we're doing a deep dive into one of the biggest threats to coffee everywhere, coffee leaf rust.
You're absolutely right. It's caused by a fungus, Hemileia vastatrix, and CLR, as people call it, is pretty much recognized globally as the most economically damaging disease for coffee.
Wow.
And it's not new, It's this persistent enemy that has, in the past, just wiped out coffee production in entire countries.
So our mission today is to unpack what this rust actually is, look into its pretty surprising and frankly devastating history, and then get into the cutting-edge science fighting it right now.
Yeah.
We've pulled together the latest research, everything from satellite monitoring breakthroughs to new biological controls, genetic solutions, really give you a shortcut to being properly informed about this hidden battle for your coffee. Okay, so let's unpack this. What does coffee rust actually look like? If you've seen an infected plant, you might notice these like yellow spots first on the top of the leaves.
Exactly. And then if you actually flip that leaf over, you'll see underneath those spots, it's covered in this powdery, bright orange, rust. That's the fungus itself, the spores.
Right.
And it's not just cosmetic. The fungus basically cripples the plant's ability to photosynthesize. It covers the leaves, makes them drop off way too early.
Huh.
Imagine the plant just struggling to breathe and feed itself. That's kind of what's happening.
Okay.
And that leads straight to fewer flowers, fewer fruits, lower quality beans. It hits the coffee bean directly. It's what we call an obligate parasite. It absolutely needs that coffee plant to live.
That sounds terrible for the plant, but what's the impact, like the real-world consequence for the farmers, the people growing it?
Oh, it can be catastrophic.
Yeah.
Historically, big outbreaks can just make growing coffee completely uneconomical. I mean, just to give you an idea, there was a major epidemic in Central America back in 2012. It cut the region's coffee output by something like 16%.
16%? That's huge.
It is. And the fungus, it spreads so easily. Those tiny spores get carried by wind, by rain, even just on farm workers' clothes. And it loves warm, humid conditions. The sweet spot is between, say, 16 and 28 degrees Celsius. And crucially, it needs water sitting on the leaf surface to actually start an infection.
Okay, so the history. You said it's not new. It goes way back, right? 1861 in Kenya, hit Ceylon, Sri Lanka now in 1867. But let's talk about this thing called the Big Rust. That sounds ominous.
It was. The Big Rust basically refers to this big cluster of outbreaks that just ripped through the Americas, from Mexico down to Peru, the Dominican Republic too, starting around 2008.
Right.
The International Coffee Organization, they estimated that just those outbreaks cost Central America over $616 million.
Wow. That's staggering.
Yeah, production in Central America just tanked. It fell by 17% between 2011 and 2014. Some places, like El Salvador, saw a drop of 45%. 45%.
Unbelievable.
And the knock-on effects. Huge fall in income for farmers, costs for pesticides and things went up, and massive social impacts. They estimated 374,000 jobs lost just in Central America in 2012-13.
Good grief.
Led directly to food insecurity, increased migration, real human costs.
So this wasn't just bad luck, a random weather event. It sounds like there was more going on.
Absolutely not. No. Analysis has shown the Big Rust wasn't just nature. Some experts have actually described it as a neoliberal epidemic.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, it means it was this complex mix, right? Natural factors interacting with social factors, creating a perfect storm. So on the natural side, you had change in weather patterns, maybe weird rainfalls, warming temperatures, which shortened the time the disease needed to develop. And it let the rust spread to higher altitudes, where it wasn't usually such a big problem. There was even some talk about a new, tougher strain of rust, but that wasn't really confirmed.
Interesting. And the social side, what made things so vulnerable?
Well, socially, there were these underlying issues, things like just not great crop management, farms being neglected or having really old trees, and farmers still planting varieties they knew were susceptible.
Right.
And that was made worse because the public institutions, the government support systems that used to help farmers, they'd been weakened. So farmers just couldn't afford the fungicides or other things they needed. It's a classic case of what biologists call the Red Queen effect, from Alice in Wonderland, where you have to run as fast as you can just to stay in the same place.
Ah, right. Constantly adapting just to survive.
Exactly. Coffee growers constantly having to innovate just to keep up with this evolving fungus.
The challenges are definitely clear, and the stakes are incredibly high.
Yeah.
But, people aren't just giving up. Farmers, scientists,
hmm
they've been working on strategies for over 100 years. What are the main ways they're fighting back?
Yeah, there are basically four main lines of defense that have developed. First, you've got cultural practices.
Okay.
This is really about managing the farm environment to make it less friendly for the fungus, reducing leaf wetness, keeping the plants healthy overall.
Like basic good farming.
Pretty much. Simple things like spacing plants out properly, about 3 by 3 meters, is often recommended. That cuts down humidity, removing weeds, pruning the trees so air can circulate better.
Yeah.
That all hinders the fungus.
Makes sense.
And just making sure the plants are well fed, strong, using organic manure, things like that. Healthy plants are just naturally more resilient.
Okay, so good husbandry first. What's the second approach?
Second is chemical control. Now, historically, people used copper-based fungicides, like the old Bordeaux mixture, mostly as a preventative thing. Nowadays, there are newer systemic fungicides that can actually get inside the leaf and attack the fungus, potentially even cure an infected plant. But, and this is a big but, they come with significant problems.
And I'm guessing that's about the safety and the cost of these chemicals.
Exactly. You're hitting on a really critical point. Spraying some of these fungicides frequently, especially at high doses, well, they're classified as highly hazardous pesticides, HHPs.
Okay.
They pose long-term health risks to people. We're talking probable carcinogens, things that affect reproduction, disrupt hormones.
Yike.
And then there are the environmental worries. Harming beneficial microbes in the soil, persisting in soil and water. It's not great. Plus, trials done in Costa Rica actually showed that just relying on synthetic chemicals can massively increase costs, sometimes up to half the total cost of production.
Wow, half.
Yeah. And you risk the fungus developing resistance to the chemicals, so they stop working anyway.
Right, the Red Queen again.
Exactly. And interestingly, those same trials suggested synthetics might even hurt the trees in other ways, like causing more leaf drop, messing up the helpful microbes on the leaves. Biological products, on the other hand, seem to result in healthier, greener leaves.
So with all those serious downsides to chemicals, it really makes you ask, what are the better, more sustainable options?
Absolutely. And that brings us to what's really seen as the most effective, sustainable, long-term strategy: using resistant varieties.
Breeding tougher plants.
Precisely. The search for these started way back in the 19th century. It led pretty early on to finding Robusta coffee, Coffea canephora. It's naturally much more tolerant to rust.
And that's a big part of the market now, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Over a third of global coffee is Robusta. But for Arabica, which is, the one most people prefer for specialty coffee, the real breakthrough came with finding the Corrido de Timor, or HDT.
Timor hybrid.
Yeah, it was this saponeous natural cross between an Arabica plant and a Robusta plant found on the island of Timor. And crucially, it carried these important resistance genes from Robusta.
Wow, a lucky accident of nature.
A very lucky accident. It's basically become the foundation for nearly all modern Arabica rust resistance breeding programs around the world.
So building on that, what are some of the newer varieties that are actually making a difference out in the fields today?
Well, there's been a lot of international work on this. World Coffee Research runs these big trials, the IML-VT program, testing varieties all over the globe.
Oh.
They evaluated 29 different Arabica types, and while, nothing was totally immune everywhere, some showed really impressive resistance.
These standouts.
Yeah, for example, a hybrid called EC16, or sometimes Mundo Maya, it had the lowest average rust score across lots of different locations.
Mundo Maya, okay.
And generally, the pattern was that varieties that had some non-Arabica genes bred into them, we call them introgressed varieties, they tended to be more resistant than the pure Arabicas.
That makes sense, borrowing from Robusta's toolkit.
Exactly. Though, interestingly, there was one pure Arabica line, 83, that was the surprising exception. It also showed really high resistance. But the research also really hammered home that resistance isn't universal. A variety might be great in one place and susceptible in another, so local testing is absolutely key.
Right.
But some varieties, like Paranema, Kartika 1, and IPR 107, they showed both high resistance and stability across different environments, so those look like safer bets to deploy more widely.
So breeding is key, but are there also, natural allies? Things already in the environment that can help fight the rust?
Yes, absolutely. And this is our fourth line of defense: biocontrol and agroecological approaches. It's fascinating, actually. Even back in the 1880s, botanists like Harry Marshall Ward were speculating that maybe beneficial fungi living on the leaves could help control diseases.
Ahead of their time.
Totally. And modern research has found things like hyperparasites, other fungi like Licanicilium lacania that naturally attack the coffee rust fungus itself.
Okay.
But there's a really exciting, very recent finding. A study just published in October 2024 looked at a specific bacterium, Paenobacillus species NMA 1017, as a potential biocontrol agent.
A bacterium fighting the fungus.
Mm.
And what did this study find?
It found some really impressive results. In greenhouse tests, applying this bacterium at the same time as the rust spores reduced the amount of disease by 90%. 90.
Wow, that's huge.
It is. And it also stopped the rust spores from germinating, stopped them in their tracks by 94% in lab tests.
Incredible.
And what's really interesting is that it also worked against other rust diseases, the ones that affect maize, wheat, and even roses. So it might have really broad potential.
So this could be a powerful, sustainable alternative, especially for organic farmers.
Exactly. It offers a really promising alternative to chemicals, helps make coffee growing more sustainable, more environmentally friendly. It's a very exciting area.
So we've got these different strategies, farming practices, chemicals with caveats, genetics, biocontrols. But how do you actually track if any of this is working or where the rust is flaring up, especially over large areas?
That's where technology is really stepping up. There's recent research published late 2023 describing a new tool for monitoring this remotely, the Coffee Rust Detection Index, or CRDI.
CRDI. Okay, sounds techie. How does it work?
It uses satellite images, specifically from the Sentinel-2 satellites, which capture light in many different bands, multispectral imagery. And they use machine learning algorithms to analyze these images. They found specific light bands red, and 2 bands in the red edge part of the spectrum are particularly sensitive to changes caused by coffee rust infestation.
So the satellite's going to effectively see the rust from space, allowing faster, wider detection.
That's the idea, exactly. It gives you a robust, pretty generalizable way to get a big picture view of how the disease is spreading or receding.
Right.
This helps massively with managing large plantations, helps with that crucial early detection we talked about. It really pushes us towards being proactive, spotting outbreaks early, rather than just reacting after the damage is done, potentially saving huge amounts of coffee and livelihoods.
We have definitely covered a lot today. Wow. From, the microscopic spores of Hemileia vastatrix all the way to global economics and these really cutting-edge microbial solutions.
Yeah.
It seems really clear that the future of coffee depends on this dynamic, integrated approach.
Yeah.
You need the resilient plants, the smart farming, these innovative biological tools, and the tech working together.
Absolutely. And it just highlights how important it is to keep watching, keep doing surveillance, understanding how the pathogen itself might be changing, evolving new races. And for countries to work together, share information, identify and roll out solutions that actually fit the local conditions. The big lesson here is that knowledge, being adaptable and collaborating, they're just essential if we want to protect this crop that means so much to millions of people, both producers and drinkers.
So what's the takeaway for you listening? And maybe the next time you're holding that warm mug of coffee, just take a second to think about the hidden vulnerabilities, really, in our global food systems. And this silent, ongoing battle against these tiny but incredibly persistent threats that can, upend entire industries. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other big agricultural challenges are quietly shaping our world right now, and what other incredible science is happening, maybe unsung, to try and secure our future?